Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I want to first also congratulate our Attorney General on her swearing in yesterday. I look forward to once again working with her as the top law enforcement official here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and working with us in the legislature and making sure that issues like we're talking about today are brought to our attention, and certainly working cooperatively together to make sure that we close those loopholes in the law. I'm here today as one of the sponsors, but also there's two people from my district I hear. Obviously, Boston Police Commissioner Davis, because I represent the Charlestown neighborhood, but also Chelsea Police Chief Brian Keyes is here. Chelsea, which is a part of my district, has the largest immigrant population in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And over the years, many incidences have been brought to our attention where that immigrant community in particular is exploited. It's not only in the area that we're talking about today, it's in financial issues, it's in immigration issues, but today is probably the most egregious issue that has been brought to my attention by the people that work in law enforcement in my district, and that is the exploitation of children, of young women, and people that engage in this profession, if you want to call it that. Certainly they do amongst themselves. But it's time for us to make sure that our Attorney General, the men and women in uniform that are on the front lines with these issues every single day, have the tools that they need to effectively prosecute those that are responsible and also provide care, rehabilitation, and services for those that we know are abused in this entire process. Behind me are men and women that I serve with in the legislature. We will make sure that we continue to educate our members on this particular issue. We'll make sure to bring this issue to their attention as this session unfolds. As the Senator mentioned, there are many issues that will dominate our agenda this year, but certainly in terms of good and sound policy, giving law enforcement the tools they need, this issue needs to be paramount, and certainly we will do our very best to make sure that that happens. I want to close by thanking the Attorney General once again for sponsoring this legislation, for making sure that this issue does not go away, and most importantly for working every day to make sure that we in the legislature are also providing them and her and all of the people that work for her the tools that they need to make our Commonwealth a safer place for all. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Audrey Porter, who's an assistant director of My Life, My Choice, but also is here to speak from experience. She was kind enough to educate us in our Craigslist hearing, and we're delighted to have her with us today. Audrey?
Yeah.
Here you are. Thank you.
Hi. I'm so nervous, and it's like I don't want to be nervous on something so important. I actually come from the era of the combat zone. Was introduced to the combat zone by a guy that I thought was my boyfriend at a very early age. Ended up not getting out until age 30. Some of the experiences I had were rapes, beatings. You know, one of the things that stand out the most for me is, you know, when I think about this whole thing, I think about if it were not for the pimps or the Johns, how easy this thing would be to get rid of. And but they exist, and they are the ones who never get punished. You know, my own experience over and over again, you know, being pulled over in cars, and I was the one to get arrested. You know, just letting the guys go. You know, I work with youth that are being exploited right here in this community, and they are being tortured, they're being held in basements, you know, forced to take pictures, you know, with the promise of a better life. And it's usually, you know, in this area, it's usually the kids that are in the system, the children, a lot of the inner city children, the poor kids with the promise of, you know, I'll make you a star. And, you know, and so the work that I do, like I made it out, but I'm constantly reminded through the children today. And I think what is so scary today is that when I was out there, I was visible. Like the police did know who I was. But today it is with the internet, our children are being put in a hotel room. You know, they taking these pictures, put in a hotel room, and no one is there. You know, they have no way of of anyone finding them. And it is a real scary situation. I'm really excited that, folks are really starting to take a look at this. I need to say, too, like for the media, I think one of the reasons I really get disturbed is that, a lot of times I speak and I talk about like this issue and then I open the paper and I always see things like in the, next to my picture, former prostitute. And so one of the things that I want to clear up is that I'm a survivor of the commercial sex industry. Thank you. And I need to say that there is more to me than that. Like today, I really try and help the youth. I work closely with the children, and I think like the media has to be careful because we want our children to be able to step forward and talk about what is happening to them. But if they open newspapers and see things like former prostitute, or, you know what I mean, those type of things, a lot of times that will make them afraid to come forward, aside from the fact that they are afraid for their lives. And I am an advocate, and I will always advocate for these children, and I think about being in Las Vegas, and I did a training for the juvenile court, and I remember the judge there saying that they arrest 300 children a year in Las Vegas, and 80% of them are not even from Las Vegas, where pimps have trafficked our children. And if you take a child that is from the backwoods of Maine, and you bring that child to New York City, Las Vegas, it is no different than the child who has been brought here from a foreign country that knows no one, only the pimp. That's their only source, their only contact, so it is no different. The fear is still the same. And there's nothing glamorous about children selling their bodies, having to sell their bodies over and over and over again to these strange men who are taking advantage, of our children. And, it really breaks my heart, and I will continue to fight, like for more Johns to be arrested. Pimps need to be charged. I read a story. I couldn't even read the whole story about a week or so ago about a 16-year-old that was arrested. I mean, the pimp was arrested, a couple or something, and they dropped the charges because they said she had been prostituting before she met him. A 16-year-old child. If I had to guess the story, I would guess that he is the one that got caught and the first pimp got away. So I will continue to advocate. And again, I just want to close with, it could happen to your children. With the internet, it does not matter. I remember thinking, my daughter's home, she's safe, she's online, and I live in the suburbs. Pimps are recruiting our children from all over. And so I will continue to advocate for these children. And again, I am just going to end with, that I'm grateful that I made it out, that I survived the commercial sex industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Now, District Attorney Sam Sutter has the envious position of following Audrey. Sam, thank you.
Audrey, thank you very much for that brave testimony. My colleague from Bristol County is correct. We do spend some time at these press conferences thanking one another, but I would like to thank Attorney General Coakley and Senator Montigny, Representative O'Flaherty, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee on the House side, and my esteemed colleague from Suffolk County, Dan Connolly, for what clearly is their vision and their determination on this issue. What struck me most in my review of the legislation is to reiterate what the Attorney General said. Massachusetts is one of only 5 states in our country without human trafficking legislation. All of us believe very strongly that this needs to be corrected during this legislative session. Today is a wonderful gathering and a wonderful first step, but it's only the first step. And what's going to be needed is to continue this momentum. I've had my own experience with pushing very hard to get legislation passed, and I think there are 3 ingredients. And one is steady attention, and some of that has to come from the media, persistence, and high energy. But it's reassuring to know that we have two very strong forces in the legislature that are going to be leading the push during this legislative session to get this passed. So I thank them, and I thank all of you, and let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Dan Conley.
Thank you, Attorney General Coakley, and Audrey, thank you very much. I've heard Audrey speak several times. I don't know why she comes back and says, "Oh, I was so nervous. I'm glad that's over with." Terrific speaker, better and better every time, but you give tremendous testimony for the cause that we are all working so hard at. If anyone doubts the existence of human trafficking in Massachusetts, consider the case of Ryan Dunton. He was a pimp from Avon, and he knew that while you can sell a drug only once, you can sell a teenage girl over and over again. Ryan Dunton called himself Mr. Real, and he even had the moniker tattooed on the skin of a girl he'd named Precious. Dunton had lured Precious into prostitution when she was just 16, and he turned her out on Craigslist in the pages of the Boston Phoenix. By the time she came to our attention, she was 19, and showing the ropes to this pimp's latest acquisition, another 16-year-old girl. Dunton approached this teenager in a bus station, and he told her that she could make a lot of money if she worked for him. Within just a few days, he had taken her cell phone away and was driving her to cities and towns all around Boston to turn her out just as he had done with Precious. Girls like Precious are exploited on the street in classified ads, and as Audrey said, online. Research has shown us that most of them enter prostitution in their early teens or younger. They've been pressured, coerced, and even forced into a life that deprives them of choice and dignity. They're victims, not offenders, and we're determined that the law ought to treat them as such. In Boston and in Suffolk County, our policy is to terminate criminal charges against juveniles who are arrested and charged with sex for a fee. We refer to these young girls, and to a lesser extent, but a very real extent, young boys, who are arrested to social service agencies through the Children's Advocacy Center, the Family Justice Center, and Support to End Exploitation Now program. And we focused our enforcement efforts on the pimps who exploit these children. Now, I'm here to express my unconditional support for Attorney General Coakley's bill, and I applaud the sentencing range, the possibility for restitution, and especially the demand-side approach for enforcement. Today, the penalty for paying for sex with a child only applies if the exploited child is under the age of 14. The Attorney General's bill would raise that age to 18, providing for up to 10 years in prison for anyone who would buy or sell sex with a juvenile. Had this bill been in effect when Ryan Dunton was before the court, it would have covered the 16-year-old girls that he was trafficking. Legislation like this sends a strong message to men like Ryan Dunton, but it should also send a message to men who buy sex from young girls. We're redefining the problem of human trafficking in Massachusetts, and we're making explicit the role that Johns play in it. Prostitution is not a victimless crime when it goes hand in hand with rape, violence, and lifelong trauma. The victims are real, and this bill will protect them. Thank you all very much.
Ed.
Thank you, Attorney
Needs
General.
no introduction.
That's very kind of you. Good morning to everyone. I want to take a minute to thank the Attorney General and Senator Montigny and Chairman O'Flaherty for their leadership on this very important piece of legislation. I'm here joined by colleagues from across the state who lead police departments, and by union leaders who are very much in support of this legislation. In the room here is Sergeant Donna Gavin, who runs our human trafficking unit in the Family Justice Center in the Boston Police Department. They work with this problem day in and day out. It fuels the gangs and some of the money that they're making, and we are focused intently on holding them accountable for this. I have a speech here that talks about the benefits of this bill, but you've heard about all that, so I'm going to keep that speech in my pocket, and I'm just going to tell you a couple of fast things. I made my first arrest of a pimp in 1982. I prosecuted a pimp federally in 1986 who was doing exactly what Audrey said, going up to Manchester and Lowell and recruiting girls from small towns around those cities, bringing those girls down into Boston, into New York, into Atlantic City, into Miami, and finally out to Las Vegas, Nevada, to prostitute them. I've seen this happen. I've been personally involved with the families of these young girls who have been victimized, and I am blown away that Massachusetts is one of only 5 states not to have this law in place. So I only have one question. Which legislator, who in the Senate, who in the House, would vote against this bill? Thank you.
And finally, but not least, certainly our President of the State Police Association of Massachusetts, Rick Brown, and then we'll take some questions. Rick, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, and I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud that we supported Martha Coakley when she ran for re-election. The State Police Association of Massachusetts greatly appreciates her bringing this to the forefront, and Senator Montigny and Representative O'Flaherty, thank you for your work on the Hill to get this through. I'm not going to stand up here with a speech because Audrey, I guess, touched on anything that you should possibly even know about this. And as a member of a labor organization, the largest police labor organization in Massachusetts, we will do everything we can to help Representative O'Flaherty and Senator Montigny in the Attorney General's office get this through. I know there are people in the Attorney General's office that have dealt with these issues before. And by her putting this task force that she's going to put together with the chiefs of police from all the cities and towns, the State Police Association's Colonel McGovern, or her designee, in the district attorney's office, this will get done. If you have kids like I do, and girls like I do, and one living in New York City, and if you don't think these things happen, they do. And if you don't go to bed worrying about your kids every single night when they're not in your home, and something like this can't happen, you're wrong. It happens in this state, it happens all over the country, and it's about time that we're going to be the, I believe, the 46th state to put this on the books. And everybody in the community, any community, should be behind this. And our labor organization will be behind this to get this done. And I thank you, Attorney General, for bringing this out, the district attorneys, the chiefs of police, and our legislative body. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?